Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
It's starting to get warm out there. Not too happy. It's getting into these sweat months.
It is getting, it's not that warm in New York. I mean, today is nice in New York, but it's been kind of back and forth. So.
It's been back. This is why I hate spring, because it's back and forth. You need a winter coat in the morning. Then you got to carry it home at night and you're sweating bullets through your t-shirt. Spring is just a nightmare.
Yeah, no, well, spring is not a nightmare. Summer's a nightmare. Spring's just like that dream that happens before the nightmare.
No, I really don't like spring. I don't like the moist soil. I don't like the temperature fluctuations. If you're trying to travel during spring, you have to pack every bit of wardrobe that you own. You need sweaters, you need layers.
Oh,
yeah. Thermals. You need your entire wardrobe. At least with the summer, you get nice thin clothing, and you can pack more because there's no sleeves, right? So that's extra fabric that you can put into additional pieces of clothing in the suitcase, and at least you know what you're in for with the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I was just in Ocean City, visiting my family, and I packed for more of summer, and I had to pick up some sweaters.
I mean, that's what a nightmare.
Yeah,
what a nightmare.
Yeah.
Of course, it's good that we have started off talking about seasons because, of course, we are talking today about summer trip planning for this summer, 2022, which is a very specific sort of season to be traveling in.
Yes, I mean, this is the first, it's tough to say post-pandemic summer because obviously we're not post the pandemic.
No, this is just the summer where we've accepted that we live in total
This is what I call the endemic summer.
Exactly. Yeah, endemic summer. It's not quite as catchy as hot vax. But of course, Ryan, before we get into it, I did want to share an exciting piece of news from the personal life, the day job with our listeners here.
Yeah, this is some exciting news for you.
So I am, after over a decade in agency communication, ad agency life, I'm excited to say. It's God's work. I took that break for Goldman Sachs to do the Lord's work, and to God's work. I have taken a new position with a company that's based here in Boston. I'm going to be the chief marketing officer of it's a food restaurant group and meal delivery service called Clover Food Lab. I think you're familiar with it, right?
I am. I've eaten at a Clover Food Lab in Cambridge, and I really enjoyed myself.
Well, it's a great restaurant. I've been obsessed with it ever since. I used to come up when I was working with MIT. I'd come up from New York, get off the Amtrak at South Station. Clover was always the food truck right outside. They had great coffee, and I used to say to Catherine, these people are doing something just incredible, because the hook of the restaurant is that the food is so delicious that you actually forget that it's completely vegetarian. They don't lead with the vegetarian message, and it all comes from a concern about climate change. So if we lessen our meat consumption, that will bring down the amount of greenhouse gases that meat production creates, and we can all be healthier and happier and live in a planet where we can keep taking those gas guzzling air.
Yeah, no, I'm willing to eat vegetarian if it means we can fly for a few more years.
I mean, Clover has long been one of my recommendations for people that come to Boston because the food is so interesting, especially because they actually build themselves as fast food. They want to be competitor with like Taco Bell and McDonald's, baby.
But they don't taste like fast food. It tastes like real food.
No, if anything, I think it tastes more like farm to table kind of food.
It's like farm to table fast food. Yeah,
precisely right. And so I'm sure I'll have lots of fun facts about it. But I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about it. But I do have an interesting travel tie-in to do with Clover Food Lab, if you're interested.
I am.
All right. So you mentioned that you had eaten at a Clover in Cambridge.
Yes.
And there's 12 restaurant locations. There's a couple Clover stands within Whole Foods up here. And so anywhere you're in the Boston area, you can get to a Clover. But one of the very best ones is in Harvard Square. And it's of interest not only for the food you can get there, but also because of the really interesting historic artifact that you can check out that was hidden in the restaurant walls when they opened the location.
I love that. So wait, they were renovating and they found some kind of artifact?
Yeah. So when I was an undergrad, there was it's this little corner lot right in Harvard Square, and there was a Chinese food restaurant there. And when they took over the space in 2017, they started to take out the walls, and below the plastered walls of this Chinese food restaurant, there were these beautiful preserved tiles. The tiles date back to a restaurant that was there that was frequented by Harvard undergrads called the Waldorf Lunch. And it opened there in 1913 and served students through the 1930s. And the decor is beautiful and awesome. Basically, there's these mosaics of H's standing for Harvard all around in a crimson band around the wall of the restaurant. And the floor has hidden H's in this very interesting kind of pattern that, if I didn't tell you it was a sign for Harvard, you might not recognize it, but right when I told you, you'll be able to see it. But most interestingly, all the way around the restaurant at the very top of the wall, there are academic pennants, like those flags that like you used to wave around at football games, those triangle flags. And it has the names of great educational institutions all over the United States. So you've got your Harvard, Exeter, Andover, Clark, Yale, Brown, all the kind of big major names in education are preserved in this tile work all around the restaurant.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. You got to post a picture of this on the old Instagram.
I will. And I will say, I want to give a shout out to the CEO of Clover, who actually shelled out of his own pocket $300,000 to preserve these historical artifacts.
Oh, that's very cool. I admire that.
Very cool. And he even snuck in. Now, this is going even deeper into this as a tourist attraction. He even snuck in. There was one pennant that had been completely removed. It was originally for Boston College. And today it has been remade and it says Full Circle. And Full Circle is the name of a small private school that the founder's parents actually run. So it's a little shout out to mom and dad that he preserved up there among the Harvard and Yale names.
Kiernan, I'm impressed that you managed to get in, that you went to Harvard into this episode. I didn't see that in the show notes.
Listen, it's a Boston-based restaurant. It's probably going to be coming in a lot more often.
I can see Clover Food Labs is going to get a lot of shout outs in Secret Boston. It'll be one in every category.
I think, trip planning to Boston episode 4 and 5 will be mostly Clover based.
Yeah. How to do like a Clover walking tour or something like that.
The food really is good. But we'll be talking about that on future episodes. Now, Ryan, I do want to jump into, we should share a bit about what our travel plans are for the summer, but we got to get into, it's not hot vax summer. What did you call it?
Endemic summer.
It's endemic summer 2022 trip planning.
I think it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. Well, let's just start by comparing notes. I think you've got a much more ambitious travel plan for this summer than I do. So where are you going this summer?
So the plan is to follow your footsteps to Peru. In fact, one of the things that we're using to plan is the actual Peru trilogy.
The trilogy. Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to link to those episodes. We've got a great Peru planning episodes where I talk all about where Catherine and I took our honeymoon.
Yeah, no, so this is sort of, I guess, a honeymoon-esque trip. And then the second place we're going to go, because we're going to be all down south already, is Bolivia, which I'm super excited about.
Man, you are taking advantage of those borders being open again.
Oh yeah, no, this is it's going to be an epic trip, and we are just sort of in the beginning stages of getting everything planned, where we want to go, the cities we want to hit, the train schedule in Peru, all that good stuff. So there's going to be quite an adventure. I think it's going to be 4 weeks.
Whoa! Wow.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pack your mic.
If I can get it through customs, yeah.
What's it, full of liquid?
I just don't want to look like a journalist or something. When
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. Well, I actually have a mission for you when you go to Lima, because there's a souvenir there. It's a sculpture of a capybara, which you can see out in the Peruvian Amazon. And I didn't get it. And it's small and it's light. So don't worry, it fits the 3 Ps. It's a tiny bit pricier. But highly portable. And don't worry, I'll pay you back. I'll Venmo you.
Yeah.
And
I charge like a 40% fee for.
Well, do you know? So this was a souvenir I considered getting when I was there. I decided I didn't need it, and I've been thinking about it since the day I left. I've actually had somebody else try to find it for me when they took a trip to Peru. This time, I'm going to make sure that you can find it. And I had even reached back out to the store and then the original sculptor to find out if I could have it shipped to the United States. And of course, it was 5 times the original price to actually ship it. So I hope you have a little spare room in that suitcase.
Yeah, no, I will make room for. I believe is this the bug?
What bug?
Wasn't there a bug you forgot to get? What was it exactly?
I think the bug you're referring to is from the taxidermy store in Paris. As you can tell, I often have deep regrets about souvenirs I don't get because I'm so darn cheap.
Yeah.
No, the capybara is the world's largest rodent. And it basically looks kind of like a beaver without a tail, I'd say. And they're often seen resting along the rivers.
So not a bug, but a rodent.
I've graduated from bug to rodent.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're gonna have a very weird collection of vermin. I guess it's like a vermin collection.
Yeah, that's right. I failed to require these, but I'm keeping a vermin shelf open in the living room.
Yeah, well, that's. I'm sure your kids will love just looking up at the sort of horror show that their fathers assembled above them.
Well, and before I dive into what my modest traveling plans are this summer, I'll say that for this discussion, we're going to be approaching it in pretty different ways, right? Because you're taking 4 weeks off, you're still working remotely.
Yeah,
you're kind of the swinging single host.
Yeah. Well, I just so my mom doesn't think I'm taking that much time off work, we're going to strategically be working in the cities.
So I said you're working remotely.
Yeah. But I think this is a big part of it. The ability to say, okay, we're going to plant ourselves in the weekdays in places with good internet. And then
I know we've been hiding from your mom that you lost your job 6 months ago, and we've done a good job of keeping that front up here on the podcast.
Right.
And, I, of course, am saddled with 2 children, one an infant, and both unvaccinated. So the pandemic it remains very real to me and has severely limited the travel choices in this immediate future.
Yes. So you've got several sort of, I don't want to say impediments, but things that you have to consider.
I have to be a bit more careful. And also, frankly, it's going to, in some ways I feel very lucky that this is a time where traveling as a family man, in the pandemic, there's fewer choices, but that's kind of okay because you can only do so much with children of this age anyhow. And to be totally frank, this summer is going to be a challenging summer to travel. And that's what I really want to focus on from my side of things. There's this trend that they've called they've dubbed it in the travel industry revenge travel.
Revenge travel.
Yeah. And this is where you travel to your enemy's house and you come with weaponry and a bad attitude. Now, revenge travel refers to the fact that we're all trying to get revenge on the pandemic. We're trying to avenge the last 2 lost years. And so there's expected to be just a huge surge in demand through June, July, and August 2022 to get out there exploring.
And you couple that with inflation, rising gas prices, and you've got, a difficult situation when you're planning travel this year.
Exactly. The demand is so high that you're seeing airline ticket prices way up, very hard to book into hotels. And yeah, there's no question that purveyors are taking advantage of the fact that they can charge high prices. So that's making it a lot harder. And as you say, with high gas prices, that means even road trips, which used to be, you know, the cheaper alternative, have become much more expensive.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have been driving for just for like a month or so because I was back home, and I have to tell you, the sticker shock of gas, for folks who live in cities and don't, you know, have to fill up a tank ever, it is really something. Like, you know, how much it costs to fill up your tank these days.
Plus, Ryan, on top of all that, you have international travelers excited to get back into the United States. So you had a huge domestic surge in revenge travel. And then, of course, you know, it's great for the economy that we're getting international travelers back. But it puts a further strain on the infrastructure, the housing, and your ability to get to do what you want to do.
Yeah. So are we recommending that folks plan earlier than they would in a general summer?
Well, listen, I would recommend that folks go back to one of our earliest, but it's foundational episodes of the podcast, Trip Planning 101. Early planning, reservations are going to be one of the most important things that you can possibly do, especially if, like me, you're traveling with a family. So, you know, we're keeping it pretty close to home. We're doing a family vacation where we go to the shore in Connecticut. And then I have a feeling we're going to get out to the Hamptons, probably New York City. So we're still staying within driving distance because we're not ready to take the kids out on a plane yet. But even when we go to just those places, Airbnb, hotel, restaurant reservations, plus anything recreational that we want to do, we're planning far, far in advance.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. In fact, one of the tips that I was going to talk through today is making your restaurant reservations much earlier than you would otherwise, because everybody's going out to eat right now. People have just been so tired of being stuck at home that even in cities you wouldn't imagine, restaurant reservations are much harder to get at the key places. So planning earlier than you would for these things makes a ton of sense.
And, you know, this, it struck me. I think I've shared before, a couple years ago, Catherine and I went to Maine in the summer, and we spent a huge amount of time trying to get a parking spot within Acadia National Park. And so we ended up spending more time than I wished that I wanted us to be out hiking, just going around and around looking for an open spot.
Yeah, and it doesn't really count as hiking if you're just walking around a parking lot, you know?
No, to be clear, I didn't have the car in neutral and I wasn't pushing it around the parking lot. I was actually driving, which maybe is even worse. But it's striking that something that the National Park System has been talking about is finally coming to fruition this summer, which is because of this surge that they expect to be coming from domestic and international tourism. A lot of the most popular national parks are actually putting in place a reservation system this summer. So you've got Acadia introducing timed entry for cars, Arches National Park in Utah, Glacier National Park. You have the Hawaiian National Park, Haleakala, is going to require reservations for cars because that's a big place where you go to Maui's highest summit in order to see the sunrise. That's going to require you to get in. Boy, if you don't have a reservation, you show up there at 4 a.m., you are not going to be a happy camper.
Yeah. And taking a road trip to Hawaii, I think, is really something, you know? Like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So book it way in advance, folks. But seriously, the list goes on and on. Rocky Mountain, Shenandoah, Zion. I mean, these are places that you used to expect to just be able to roll in, or at least roll in and then get on the bus system through the parks, but it's getting harder and harder. So, you know, we're still in May. You have enough time that you can look out. Maybe you have some flexibility in your timing. Book the reservation for what you want to do first, and then back out to things like the hotels, the flights. Don't do it in reverse, because as you say, Ryan, what if you get all the way to Hawaii? You can't see that sunrise.
Yeah. You know, and another thing that we've talked about, Kiernan, in the past is if you want to go see a specific area, you want to go to a national park, if for some reason you can't get in, there's almost always state parks that are nearby that have a lot of the same characteristics and are just less popular than those national parks. So, you know, don't forget state parks when you're doing your planning this year. I'm definitely going to be at a bunch of them over the summer.
Boy, I don't mean this to be a link fest back to our old episodes, but we have a great episode all about state parks with a New York Times travel journalist, Peter Kujawinski. And so we can give that a post too. But as you say, often these state parks are lesser known treasures directly next to the national parks. The nature's the same, even if the name on the sign isn't.
Exactly.
So that's a great piece of advice. And I'll tell you, by the way, the home for all of this planning, especially these national park sites, recreation.gov. And it's a surprisingly usable, good UX friendly website that will help you plan out if you're anticipating going to any of these places. And by the way, this was not an exhaustive list. There may well be other systems put in place or other reservations that you might need to make. Like, for example, maybe you're not staying at a national park lodge, but you want to eat in the restaurant one of the nights that you're visiting the park. These are things that you need to research deeply and be ready to be flexible with, given the revenge travel of 2022.
Revenge travel. I mean, that sounds like going someplace that your ex really wanted to go, and then posting a lot about it on Instagram.
Oh, that's a really good. Well, maybe we can take the term past this summer, and we could introduce it as that. Like, oh, we were planning this trip, or maybe it's the honeymoon, and you pulled out of the marriage right at the last minute, but you still took the honeymoon. That would be revenge travel.
Yeah, I think that's a better usage of revenge travel. Something else I think folks should consider when they're planning their trip is to actually dig deeper and go to some more of these offbeat sites in a certain area. So, it might be difficult to get into that main national park or that main restaurant or that the one house that everybody always talks about. But there's always a lot of stuff to do in cities, and I encourage folks to use a tool like TripAdvisor and go much deeper into the recommendations. So get out of the first 3 pages. They're going to have the things that everybody does, and find the more sort of offbeat, interesting things that you can sort of pair with the larger experiences. I think that's a better way to see a town. And in this age where everything's going to be packed, you might, actually have some space to be with the family and not be just crushed by other tourists.
Yeah, and 3 good resources for this. One is I really love the website and media agents and media company Atlas Obscura. They do a lot of user-generated but curated lists of interesting and odd, quirky things that you can see all around the United States. If you're heading to Europe and certain places in the U.S., though, I think right now it's limited to New York, D.C., maybe L.A. and New Orleans. The secret guides, the Jonglei Publishing secret guides, are exactly what you're describing, Ryan. And then the third is dive into the local television, radio, and newspapers of the areas, because they will inevitably have a travel section, some local writer who finds these little, odd historical places that would only be covered in that local media, and doesn't make its way onto, the New York Times, 36 hours about the place.
Yeah, and this is a really good trick with restaurants too, because often what will happen is you have sites like Eater that'll put together the 30 must-eat restaurants in Minneapolis, and then all of a sudden those 30 will become very popular. But if you're looking in the local media for restaurant openings and new reviews, you can actually get to those restaurants before the sort of national food media makes them destination places.
And, I've actually been building up this library of kind of odd and interesting guides to places. Many times at local bookstores, you can find a more regional guide that you wouldn't easily find on Amazon, for example. That's a good place to source destination materials. But also,
museum gift shops are a wonder, and local museums they have the most niche publications imaginable. So if you find yourself in a museum in the place that you're visiting, you can usually buy a book there that is written by somebody local that will give you a lot of really offbeat ideas that are not on the top 10 list.
And you know what? I got it. You know what you actually turned me on to this year, Ryan, was the Accidentally Wes Anderson book and Instagram feed, because they'll feature, you know, it might not be a place that you'd go for a full tour, but interesting architectural highlights of places. So again, just you can search out, I'm going to be in this area. Is there anything that's worth me, you know, taking an hour, 2-hour drive to go admire? And you can learn the whole history and story from an Accidentally Wes Anderson write-up.
Yeah, no, they do a really good job of highlighting interesting things to see in places. And they actually, their catalog is not just the big cities. I mean, they go into some really kind of off the beaten path. Like, you know, if you're planning a road trip, I think that's a great website to check out to see if there's places you're going to pass that you can check out.
And so assuming that you're biting the bullet and you actually are executing on a trip for this very crowded summer, you know, things have definitely changed based on the pandemic. And so just a couple considerations that I think you particularly want to think about here in 2022. The first is, for the people that you're traveling with, establish some group or family rules around what you're comfortable doing and what you're not. You know, in the case of me personally, as I say, I'm traveling with unvaccinated children. So my concern's a little higher about bringing them into places. But if I know there's, you know, a low infection rate, that the population is generally vaccinated where we're going to be, then I feel a bit safer. And of course, going to restaurants where they check things like vaccination status is going to be appealing to me. But of course, also, you got to add things to that checklist for your packing purposes, because some places want to see the actual vaccination card, or maybe they'll accept a picture. Some will want you to send it beforehand. And then some cities have come up with, you know, their own individual apps and ways to verify your vaccination status. So again, planning ahead is the key to success in this revenge travel summer.
And, you know, be the kind of person who supports whatever the local COVID rules are. Like, you know, I talk a lot about how in Mexico City, they have a couple things that I think are somewhat ridiculous, like having to wash your shoes and alcohol. Right. But, you know, it is what that society has set up as sort of their mitigation, their COVID mitigation strategy. And I think that, you know, to be a good tourist and to be respectful of other places and cultures, you should just go along with it, even if you think it's a little ridiculous.
Well, and I also think, you know, be respectful of others' choices, but also make your own choices independently about how you feel comfortable. Personally, I'm still in an N95 most places that I go.
Oh, you're a double N95 guy.
Yeah, that would put me at, I'm an N190 guy. But no, I mean, really, I think it's important not to be shamed. If you want to enjoy yourself on traveling, you've got to feel safe and secure. So make your own choices.
Totally. You know,
but also you should be ready if you're going to a place where you know nobody wears masks. You know, maybe you want to pick a different destination.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And remember, folks, like, just because the court struck down the mask order on airlines doesn't mean that you don't have to wear a mask. You can wear a mask if you want, if that makes you feel more comfortable. And in fact, I've been thinking I will probably wear a mask in air travel for the foreseeable future.
I mean, I also think, you know, you look at some of these people, they should be wearing a mask 24 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just based on what God gave you.
And one other thing I'll say, if folks are, you know, planning to go out, hit the town, do a little nightlife, is look into the various like bars and clubs, et cetera, that you're thinking about going to, because COVID has changed a lot of those rules. Places have closed that look to be open on Google Maps. Places open later, they close earlier, et cetera. So just make sure that you kind of do that part of the planning. Typically, you would just be able to roll up to a bar, but you know, COVID has really changed the situation, and I found in my post-COVID travels that things are just different when you go out. So that's something to be aware of.
Well, and Ryan, to hark back to one of our great, seemingly intuitive but underused travel tips, I think that the importance of the travel packing list has only been underlined by the pandemic. Because think of all the additional things that you're going to want to bring. You're going to want to bring the vaccination cards, the masks, and if you have gone ahead and made all these reservations that we've been recommended, remember, you always want to bring a paper printout of those reservations. Much harder for people to say that they lost the reservation if you have it right there in front of them.
Gosh, I've gotten so bad at this. I've become such a phone guy, and I used to even a few years ago, I was a printout guy, and the printer broke and we never replaced it, and now I'm just like a phone guy. But I think that you're right. I think ultimately having that proof, a printout is the way to go.
I guess maybe the final parting word is, if you're embarking on the time that is going to be quite busy and expensive, but be kind. Be kind to other travelers, be kind to the people who are working at the restaurants and at the hotels. I think there's going to be a lot of overwhelmed folks, and I think that the tempers could get pretty hot along with the temperatures. And so, be the traveler that's willing to be generous to others and try to make everybody's trips be successful.
Yeah, no, that sounds right in endemic summer and any other summer.
So Ryan, with that, I think it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Well, Ryan, we're here in the final segment of the show. It's the last segment of the show. That's why we call it the last stop. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. And it's popularly known as the people segment. And that's because it's a segment that's meant not just for you or for me, but for all of us together. And we all have input, except that really just you and I have input, because we each bring one thing, a piece of ourselves, if you will. And, I define that very broadly. It could be a memory, could be an aspiration, could be a dream, could be a daydream. It doesn't even have to be just a night dream. Could be a past experience, maybe a playful anecdote, maybe quite a tragic anecdote. Could be a piece of gear. Could be anything, as long as it fits this one as long as it has this one characteristic. It has to inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So Ryan, I hope that wasn't a surprise to you that there was that one criterion. So I have to ask you, as I ask you every week, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did, Kiernan. I read this wild story about an American family that took a trip to Tel Aviv, a city that I've always wanted to go to. So jealous about that. And when they were exploring sort of the West Bank and the area around that, they found an old unexploded bomb.
Oh dear.
Now that is quite a it's quite a discovery. But I think what these folks did next is really shocking. They decided to put it in their backpack and try to take it through airport security.
That's a mind-blowing decision.
Yeah. So when the airport security opened up their luggage and they saw a undetonated bomb.
Wait, is this Madison Cawthorn?
No, even Madison doesn't go this far. It caused like a panic in the airport, as you would expect if somebody brought a bomb. And the family was,
at least Madison, he only brings loaded guns.
Exactly.
To the airport.
Twice. But yeah, so what happened was the family wasn't charged with anything. They were not allowed to bring their bomb with them on the plane, but they did cause a lot of chaos. So folks, if you find undetonated artillery in an old battlefield, you cannot transport that via plane. You probably shouldn't touch it or move it because an undetonated bomb could, in theory, detonate. So wouldn't want that to happen with you in your little travel backpack. It's much better to buy a souvenir from some place that is, where they've made sure it's not going to blow up.
Wow, that is that's an explosive piece of news.
It really is. It really is. A really bright American family.
Doing our country proud, Brad.
Do you have the last stop this week?
I do. This is one of those articles that I can't resist within the New Yorker, and you read these quirky little things and have to add them to your travel list. So, in the latest issue of the New Yorker at the time of this recording, so published on April 18th, there's an article by Rebecca Mead called "Transforming Trees into Skyscrapers," and it's about this trend, primarily in Scandinavia, of building skyscrapers completely of wood instead of, steel and concrete. And there's environmental advantages to this. There are people who are skeptical of it, but there's an interesting sustainability argument because basically, as you take trees out of these massive forests in Scandinavia, you can replant them. And so it profiles particularly this, the tallest all timber building in the world, which is called Mjøstarnet, which is means the Tower of Mjøsa, which is a lake that it is on in Norway.
This is a beautiful building.
It's a gorgeous building, and it's in a small town that has no other reason to be on your map. It's not a tourist town, but this 18-story wooden hotel and office space tower is extremely striking. And the name of the town, by the way, is Brumunddal. And so the article dives deep into what it's like to be in an all timber hotel, and is very funny about her expectations of kind of a cozy ski lodge, but then all the creative ways that the architects have used what were actually extremely traditional techniques. Like, for example, putting together two joints of wood and joining them with a peg instead of with a nail. And as the peg, which was dried out, expands, it actually creates such a tight link between the two pieces that no nails or screws are required. And, this is ancient knowledge being made new by innovative architects and engineers.
Oh, I love this. I would love to see some houses built here in Bushwick out of wood.
I mean, it's only a matter of time from what I understand. And so if you check out particularly the article online, not in the paper edition, you get a lot more pictures of some of these buildings around the world. They visit a music school. They speak to architects that are working specifically on wooden buildings. And I think that this would be a great and beautiful trend. I hope it grows.
Yeah, gosh, and it's in this article, there is an interesting Austrian study that shows that people who are in wooden rooms versus concrete or steel have a lower resting heart rate.
Yes, that's Rebecca Mead's very funny in saying, well, after one night in my wooden hotel room, I can't, attest to that fact. But it's definitely a nice thought.
It makes sense though, right? When you're in like when you're in like a old school, just wooden house, there's like a calming effect. And then when you're in a big steel skyscraper, in my mind. Yeah. Yeah.
And while Mjøstarnet is the current tallest all timber building, it does mention a rivalry with a building in Vienna called the Ho Ho Hotel, which is a 275 foot high all timber building. So they actually upped the footage of the Mjøstarnet when they were building it just so it could attain the title.
That's going to be some fire. I mean, just
she talks about the fire concern. Really interesting, like how they engineer the wood. So they basically treat it so that it wouldn't burn all the way through. So it compares it to like if you threw a huge log into a fire, it gets singed all around the edges, but it doesn't burn straight through that log. Very similar idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I buy that. I would stay in this hotel in a heartbeat. It gives me another reason to go to Scandinavia.
And it's going to be a nice, calm, resting heartbeat.
Yeah, I could use that, after all the, never mind.
So Ryan, now that we've talked about summer travel 2022, I think next episode, you're going to take us to a great place to travel during the summers.
Yeah, I'm going to take us to the eastern shore of Maryland, which is a great place to drive if you're in New York or DC or Baltimore or, in the area. It's a great summer weekend trip, and I'm going to have there's some really interesting things to see there. So I spent 18 years of my life there, and it's interesting to go back now sort of as a tourist and do some of the things that I really, when you're a kid, you just don't think of these things as unique or special, and then later on you're like, oh wow, that's actually a really cool thing. So,
and I know you grew up in a sort of majestic oceanfront property. Is that open to the public?
No, my family sold the beach house during the divorce, Kiernan. So thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, Ryan. Folks, don't feel bad. Ryan's doing just fine.
Well, until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
Is he taken?
You going to take the kids out to eat on the Hamptons?
If I can get a reservation, I'll have to call ahead and say, this is the party for Mick Jagger.